Well, I just want to start by welcoming everyone here today. Uh, Obviously, stress is really important to all mind mirror trainers. It's usually what drives us all to relaxation and ultimately the mind mirror because it so profoundly affects brainwaves. We thought that it would be a great idea to just talk with Bob and Christine, who have this wonderful radio program, Stress Free Now, and also David Fairweather, who is a hypnotherapist and a psychologist and a mind mirror practitioner, and as very much a stress expert too. So welcome to all of you, and we want this just to be fun and upbeat and free-flowing, and so I'm sure they will invite you to ask any questions that you want to at any point. And then if we have time, and of course we can decide to make time, whoever's hooked up, including myself, will meditate or whatever happens to a series of different exercises that Bob and Christine are going to have for us, and David too if he wants to throw something into the mix. And so let me just start out by asking you, Bob and Christine, first, just to say a little bit about what involved you with Stress Free Now radio show, and why is the whole subject of stress so important to you?
Well, it's something we all live. It's a lived experience, I think, for everyone. I think I noticed it first in college. That was the first time I had so many deadlines. I had a full course load, and before that, I'd have a good night's sleep every night. So that was when I started to stay up into the wee hours. And certainly being in the business that we are now, with all the information we have, we still find that there's so many stressors, and it's so important to have techniques to replenish ourselves, to balance ourselves, so that we can stay strong and healthy. And I see it with our clients. I mean, one of the recent shows that we did was, that take on having more money than month, that we have more to do in the day than there are hours in the day. And we have to learn to leave something behind because we want to maintain our health and our sleep. That is so important. And that's usually where people cut short on their sleep.
Which of course affects health. And we had somebody on this webinar recently who showed us the profound effects of a loss of sleep. And first, before we get into what the actual effects are, I wonder, Bob, if you have something that you want to weigh in to what Christine said about why you got involved, particularly in this field.
Well, I'm going to do something weighty like David Fairweather. I just have to say, Judith, I want to thank you so much for introducing us to David. We have such fun with him, and we can't wait to get to Toronto and have him hook me up to the mind mirror while he does a NLP 6-step reframe or one of his famous hypnotic things. I want to see if it'll work on me, because I think I fall into the low hypnotism range. So I want to see if he can actually get me on the mind mirror. That would be very interesting. To sum up very briefly, I got interested in the stress business because stress almost killed me. In the early 1980s, I was in a corporate job, and I woke up one day and I discovered that I was having difficulty with my tie. I couldn't get my tie to fit. I was like, what's wrong with my tie? And what I hadn't realized was that I had lost 40 pounds, and I wasn't aware of it. Wow. And so subsequently, at that time, I used to get a massage almost every Friday, and I went to get a massage, and the massage therapist, when he did the reflexology, pressed the point on my foot, and I almost jumped off the table. And then he pressed it a second time, and he said, well, he says, I don't want to scare you, but I think you need to go to the doctor. So, being the tough guy that I was, of course, I didn't listen. And 2 weeks later, I woke up and I couldn't breathe. And I felt like a giant rubber band was around my chest. And I ended up in the hospital. And so basically what happened is I hit the stress burnout wall. And so that's how I got interested in stress. So once I recovered from that, I had made the decision and the commitment to learn how to deal with the stress and change. So it meant that I had to change my entire life and way of thinking around. And of course, I ended up getting out of that job because the job was was squeezing me like an accordion.
Yeah, it sounds like you really hit quite the danger zone. And David, how about you? What sent you the way of learning to de-stress through all the many modalities that you use for that purpose?
Similar to Bob, that really out of need for self-care. I was in an industry that really moved rapidly, that changes happened frequently, and there was a lot of pressure to really perform. And I kind of lost myself into that and didn't really look after me. I was all about my job, and I left me to the wayside. You know, it's typical of an engineer to be living from their neck up. I don't need to eat or go to the toilet. What are you talking about? I've got my computer. And I was kind of stuck in that loop with it. And my body got louder and louder and louder, trying to intervene in that feedback loop between me and machinery. Listen to me. Look after me. And I wasn't really listening. I wasn't really looking after it. You know, I can cope. I can just ignore that until it got so strong I couldn't.
Yeah.
It just floored me, because when I hit burnout, when I hit chronic pain, when I got to the point where I'd refused to listen to myself so much that I had now no choice but to listen. And that was all I could hear. And then, you know.
Did it sound like ouch, or what did it sound like? What were the actual effects on you?
Well, my effects, I'd ignored my body so much that whenever I started to use the computer, I immediately felt like someone had poured a scalding kettle of water over my forearms. It's like, that reminds you, this hurts. And what I was doing incessantly and without break was breaking my body down. Like, you know, if you don't have your car oil changed, or you don't replenish the waters and the fluids, the little engine warning light goes on. That's what I was having. And I was ignoring that until the point where bump, bump, then the car stops. Now it's always easier to fill your car up when the, you know, go and get someone to look at the engine when the warning light's on, or if the gas light's coming on, tell you you're running out of gas. It's much easier to pay attention then, refill, and move on. Because if you don't, you end up stalling in the middle of the highway. Then you've got to walk to the gas station, buy one of those red cans, and like, it's a bigger deal. I had a big deal.
Sure.
And I've learned a lot from it.
If you're not run over by an 18-wheeler on the way to the gas station, right?
Well, there's a lot of problems that can happen. You know, it's better to be proactive with health. And that's really the message that I have today. Be proactive with stress. Don't wait until it makes you, you know, its servant. You don't want to be pulled around by pain.
Well, what were your first steps in terms of reducing stress? What modalities did you turn to in order to get things?
I turned to the modality of quitting my job. I found that worked the most. Actually, I struggled for 1.5 years in seriousness, icing my arms and trying to ignore my body and just keep going. But when I really was forced to take a look at me, it was therapy. It was hypnosis therapy. I checked myself into a Buddhist temple for 6 months. I did a lot of doing nothing, because doing something wasn't something that I was managing well enough at. So I had to be completely doing nothing and then add things back into the mix, because I'd gotten that bad with my body and the way that my mind was working, and I was just in constant pain. Doing anything, changing the controls on the TV was painful.
Wow. So was this where you learned to meditate?
I've been meditating, I guess, since a teenager, but meditating to music, meditating reflectively to things. That's when I learned to not need an external object, to not be meditating to a candle or a mandala or something, or audio, someone else's, which I wouldn't recommend not doing, because I've got good audio you might want. But to be completely self-reliant is the most important thing, I think, because, you know, someone said, if you learn to meditate with a candle and then you have a car accident, you can't tell someone, wait a minute, I'll be over there with my license in a second. Just let me find my lighter and my candle. Calm down. So having an immediate way of lessening stress that you're in control of, I think, is really important.
So at what point did you begin to work with others to help them reduce stress? Where did it take you in terms of your professional life?
Well, I'd been teaching computer-aided design in my engineering career, and fairly immediately after hitting my burnout, I mean, immediate, it's a year and a half or 2 years, but I immediately kind of saw that there's a need for me to re-enter corporate life and kind of almost bring cubicle workers out into the light, show them there's more than what they're doing in their daily drudgery that's important. So that, I mean, I was in the wilderness for a little while, no job, no anything, doing my meditation study. I immediately turned that into helping others. Started my therapy training, did stress management courses, and set myself up as someone that could then help others. And I've been kind of letting the universe guide me, whether I'm going into companies or going into private practice. But it was really the first thing I did after doing nothing for a year.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. And Bob and Christine, either one of you first, what did you do? Bob, let's start with you then. Once you hit the hospital and hit that wall, what did you do for yourself to decompress and regain your health, and where did that take you professionally?
Well, the first thing was to acknowledge the issue. I was very fortunate because I hit the wall so hard that when I was in the hospital, a nurse's aide came in and he asked me why I was here and what are you doing here in the hospital? And I told him. He says, "Oh, another guy trying to make $1 million, right?" So he said, "You're burned extra crispy." And so at that time, I wasn't sure exactly what he meant. However, the condition I had was very serious because imagine waking up and not being able to take a deep breath, and the feeling state is like you have literally a giant rubber band around your chest, and so you can only take shallow breaths. And so anyone that meditates knows that, well, you don't have to be a meditator to know this, but if you can't breathe, you've got immediate issues. And so, of course, there are many forms of meditation that take advantage of high-level knowledges of breath and how breath works and the effect on the respiratory system and the psychophysiological benefits of learning how to modulate your breath. To answer your question more specifically, part of my recovery process, which was miraculous at the time to the doctors, was that when they told me that what the medications were that I was going to have to take to correct this condition, I decided I did not want to do that because I had a close family member who had taken those medications and the outcomes were not good at all. So I had found a book by Dr. Bernie Dr. Bernie Siegel, yes, fellow Yaley, and in that book, which is essentially a book on psychoneuroimmunology, as I read it, I became fascinated because I said, if a guy can cure brain cancer using the power of his mind, then I can fix, my minor issue here. And so what I did was I asked for some books from the medical library inside the hospital, and I started to actually use guided imagery at multi-sensory guided imagery, all of the different levels. And what ended up, to make a long story short, when they did, because they had done a biopsy and had done other tests, and so it was confirmed, my diagnosis. And so after I started, made the commitment to be really fully immersed into the high-level imagery states, it actually dissipated the disease state and it dissolved it. And so, as you can imagine, to the surprise of the doctors, they said, "This is impossible. We have the biopsy tissue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know the story." So the bottom line, from that moment forward, and that was—
You were a believer. You were a believer.
not just that, you can feel it in your body. So you know the difference between when you can take a deep breath and when you can't. And so this is part of the issue here, Judith, is that our entire society has become very quantitative oriented and very data driven. However, what I say to people, there's nothing wrong with collecting data, both first, second, third, and fourth person data. However, if some things are really simple, like, for example, if you ask a 5-year-old girl, do you know if you're left or right-handed? And most likely a 5-year-old could tell you whether they're left or right hand dominant. And so the thing is that, we've moved away from learning how to trust the intelligence of our body. So part of what fascinates me about, and I want to thank you and David for inviting us to be on this show, is that there has been such an emphasis on the quantitative side that there needs to be balance, like a seesaw, with the qualitative aspect. So a part of what I'm saying in my story, and I'm sure when, I just let me back up a little bit. I first became aware, first of all, let me say I've never used the mind mirror. So I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here, that I'm inching closer to being able to use it for the first time. I became aware of the mind mirror back in the late 80s. Here's what I remember. I remember reading Mega Brain. I'm not sure when the first one came out, and I think the second one came out in 1994. But in Mega Brain, they talked about the mind mirror was one of these machines, brain machines, and I was very fascinated at that time. But I had never seen one, and so with fast forwarding from the 1980s to now, we won't say how many years that is, but the bottom line is that the brainwave patterns that you are exhibiting on the mind mirror, or that are exhibited on any other neurofeedback type of equipment or EEG equipment, can be felt in the body. And so the thing is, any person that has been a long-term meditator would tell you, once they learn how to generate volitionally gamma brain waves, they know what that feels like. A person who has anxiety, I think Judith, in one of our conversations when we did a podcast with you, I had asked this question about the brain wave range between 38 hertz and 42 hertz. And so for the feeling state although the brainwave pattern is the same, the feeling state is diametrically opposed between a person that has high anxiety, and the person that would be generating states of gamma wave, brainwave compassion. So for me, this is very exciting territory, because I am very much interested in the quantitative data balanced with the feeling states. And so and this is combined with not just the brainwave pattern, but how it ties into neuroendocrine release. So for example, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, nitric oxide, endogenous morphine, this is all very exciting. And so I can't wait to get to Pennsylvania and up to Toronto and to Oksana over in Australia, because we've been to Australia twice. And so you have equipment that we would love to play with and see how this works. Thank you.
And Bob, you have some kind of research that you've done on nitric oxide. I noticed that I had a more academic biography for you to start with, and then you kind of took the academics out. But can you just say a little bit about that academic background?
My academic background? Okay, so basically I have a master's degree in psychology from Union Institute, and I have the master's degree focuses on the positive psychology side of neuropsychology. So most times when people are studying neuropsychology, they're looking at it from the paradigm is what's wrong with you, you know, what needs to be fixed. Whereas what I was looking at during my master's was performance enhancement. What you know, that we're not broken. How can we get better? So, for example, in the sports arena, it's very clear. People understand this when you say, you know, Tiger Woods or a baseball player has a coach, right? They have a coach. A C-suite level people, executives, they have coaches. They need to be able to give a speech. They have to be on a conference call with Wall Street people. They have coaches. And so the issue is that is performance enhancement. It's not saying what's wrong with you. You know, you have you're shooting basketball foul shots and you're throwing bricks up. You know, I can't tell you the last time. I used to be a pretty good basketball player, and in fact, a guy from my junior high school made the NBA. And by the way, when I was in junior high school, he used to laugh at my sneakers, saying I was wearing skips. And so I'll remind him of that the next time I see him. And then we used to belong to the boys club, and there were two players that also made the NBA. So, you know, the thing is that performance enhancement, people understand this in terms of coaching for sports. They get it, and sometimes at the high level for business. And so part of our challenge has been to get people to understand why they would need coaching and the benefits, et cetera, so that they can improve their performance. Later, I went on to do a PhD at the California Institute of Integral Studies, and I actually published the first published study in 2012, which connected the variables of stress and grief and nitric oxide. And so what I was looking at is that in the literature, no one else had connected these dots. And so the significance is tremendous, because nitric oxide, both the spiking and the flatlining, underlie all wellness. And in fact, since 1998, over 125,000 research studies on nitric oxide have been done. Let me repeat that again. Since 1998, over 125,000 research studies have been done in nitric oxide. 3 gentlemen won the Nobel Prize in physiology, in medicine and medicine or physiology in 1998 for their work in nitric oxide. So it's very exciting to me, and I feel very honored to have done the first study. And so it represents a paradigm shift towards wellness, where we're now in the terrain where prevention and wellness is more profitable than pathology.
Now that's a change. I'm not sure that's so in the United States quite yet, but it certainly is in other parts of the world. I want to turn to you, Christine, and just ask you the same question about at what point and what modalities did you study and apparently start teaching and even broadcasting about, and really what drove you there? You said you stressed out, but really in what way? And then I want to come back to Bob and ask for a brief overview of this nitric oxide effect, because it sounds like you've got a physiological thing that's of interest there. And so, Christine, what drove you to the wall, or did you go as far to the wall, far up against the wall as Bob did?
I don't think that I was where Bob was. What happened, it was really my college experience that exposed me to things that I didn't know about before, particularly body work. I think I was meant to be a teacher, but somehow I got involved in the dance department. And in the dance department, and I was actually overcome. I said, what the heck is this bodywork business? That was where I discovered Feldenkrais, Alexander, and they were new to me. And after a while, I thought, doesn't everybody know this? And especially the subject of Ideokinesis. And I fell in love with my teacher. I think everybody did, Andre Bernard. And what I found out, all these things were born of people who had an injury. And the doctor said they'd never walk again, they'd never be able to do this again. Alexander, I don't know if you're all familiar with him, Matthias Alexander. I mean, he made his living speaking, and he lost his voice. And he said, well, this won't do. And he found a cure for himself. As a dancer, my body is my instrument. And the dancing really works you out. I mean, my knees just really took it. And in college, it was all about alignment. It was about making your body last. And with all the jumping, the turning, the stretching, and so many people, I came from the world of ballet, and it was, you did it no matter what. If your toes were broken, you're still going on point. That seemed ridiculous to me. And Andre just talked about this wellness paradigm, and this was new to me. And when he did work, you know, we would touch the body, and I said, oh, my shoulder's like a brick. It's like solid brick. And Bob has an unusual talent. He can feel what's in his body. He notices it right away. And I think many of us, when we're under stress and we're in pain, we don't know. I was at the doctor once, and he said to me, he said, you know, Christine, if you ask for a Band-Aid, you probably need to be sutured. So I had a lot of denial in terms of my thinking, my feeling. I would give to everybody. I mean, I started teaching, and I did everything for everyone. I was nowhere on my list. This is something women do, but maybe men, you know, it's the same thing. You're taking care of everybody but yourself. And I just started to look, and I said, wait, life is meant to be enjoyed. You want to be healthy. You want to live in wholeness. And I noticed, hey, if I wasn't doing it and I'm teaching these children, then I need to get my act together. And coaching was sort of an outgrowth of teaching. And I just saw in my clients the same type of thing, this lack of awareness that you're stretching yourself out, you're not thinking straight, you're tired, you're living a life that you don't like, you're unhappy. That doesn't make sense. That does not make sense. And when I look back and remember the work of Bartenieff and Feldenkrais, it's all about wellness. That made sense to me. And when I met Bob, and you know, he talked about his experiences, and so many of us, we're pushing ourselves beyond our limits. And for what? Is that really the way to go? And it's not. I don't believe it is. So here I am.
Yeah, you know, we see on the mind mirror that when people start computing too fast, either because they're multitasking or because it could be because they're getting deep unconscious or subconscious upward flows of problems that are undealt with, whatever, it puts them into high beta, that it really, the person ends up with broken points of consciousness, that they feel overwhelmed, their processing is not as efficient in their minds. Edgar Cayce called it broken points of consciousness, and I've never heard a better description. That's what exactly happens. And of course that affects the body with the stress response of pumping adrenaline and speeding up the heart rate and just many, many, many different effects. Some years ago, I was watching Mind and Life Institute program. You know, they're the ones that have the neurophysiologists and scientists who work with the Dalai Lama's monks, and they were talking just an overview of stress, and I was really shocked to see that it actually affects people's reproductive cycles and the long-term wear and tear. I mean, it shortens life by years and years. And I want to talk more in this program really about the solutions for it, because everybody's felt it in some way, and we certainly know what it feels like. Not all of us know how to unfeel it. I mean, I see Laura Eichmann here on screen, and Laura came to Mind Mirror work straight out of corporate work for a major bank where she had $100 million budget, and her job was to come up with creative solutions to problems. You can see that Laura is still young, so clearly she got out in time. But so our idea here is to get out, help people find through this program ways to get out. And but before we go to solutions, I wonder if we could ask Oksana to bring up a little 11-minute exhibit I created out of several different mind mirror and various other sessions. Okay, what you're looking at here is an old session of someone who was recorded on the mind mirror EEG, the mind mirror 3, which only went up to 38 hertz. This person was very nervous about the session. You can see that she's got a lot of amplitude up in the 38 to 44 band here at the top. And also that there's a lot of disorganization and instability in her brain waves. This is early on in the session, so we can just scroll down a little bit and you'll see that she indeed does not really get any better. In fact, she gets a little worse as we get closer to subconscious content. She loses her alpha. Some of the high frequency beta is gone, but still a lot of instability, disorganization. And the instability is how you see these categories flaring out asymmetrically. Now she could have moved her head there. Nope, that's her stress. And you see how the brain waves start to disappear at times, at other times they bank right off of the display. And you can tell it's her brainwaves because her SEMG reading down here at the bottom is only 2.4 to 3. So this is indeed this brainwaves of a very, very stressed out person who, even by the end of the session, even though she quiets down her beta and she moves into some occasional awakened mind flares with sufficient alpha, like right there, there's still a tremendous instability. Here's another person on the Mind Mirror 3 who is very stressed out. This is a lady who has fibromyalgia and a lot of difficult content in her subconscious mind. Again, disorganized, unstable brainwaves. You can see she's got this outflung delta here on the left and upturned delta, on the right, and upturned delta on the left. Now she's banking off the screen. Now we can take her a little ways into the session when she should have calmed down some. Same thing's going on. Now she's got her eyes closed, so she does have some alpha showing, but you can see her stress up here in the beta. Everywhere, really, banking completely off the screen. She's got low SEMG for the most part. So these are, again, her actual brain waves. Further down into the session, let's see if she gets any better. Not really. Now she is really approaching the content. And if we had had a GSR or a BBP available for recording, then I'm sure we would see some very aroused readings. Now this is a young man that somebody brought over to my house for a session. He had the external appearance of being very, very relaxed, although his eyes darted around a lot. And sure enough, when I hooked him up, we saw a lot of stress, especially in the Lesh scale. You can see he's at a 1.3 setting, and also his BVP reading is pretty high, 94, 97, 98. I actually wondered if he were hooked up right, but then checked his readings after the session, and this is just the kind of physiological readings that you get with someone who is very mentally stressed. But it's fair to say that he's also physically stressed. He had a terrible car wreck 10 years previously, and he was in generally a lot of physical pain as well. His brainwaves don't look too bad right here, even at the beginning of the session. You can see he's got some rounding here up at the top in his beta. Whether he was thinking or stressing, I don't know. You can't really tell at this moment. But if you go down a little bit further into the session, say 7 minutes, and this is an animal sensualization, well, you see that he really is stressing here. His Lesh state is still high. His heart rate seems to have come down a little bit. We'll back out so we can see his brainwave patterns better, but he's got really a tornado up here in his beta that's, I guess, giving him these gamma amplitudes as well. Again, the disorganization and the instability. He's got a constant band at 15 hertz here that's higher than his alpha, and this is an alpha meditation. Also a lot of amplitudes up here in 24, 38. He's banking off the screen, and he's at 20 microvolts too. So we back him out even more, and you can really see this kind of tornado effect. And now he has dropped on down to a 0 on the Lesh scale. And this is not a really deep state meditation. The animal takes you into your theta. By now he would have been asked to go into his into some deeper theta for some information. And you can see that he's got a 10.5 hertz alpha band, but even stronger. Most of the time is his 12.5 alpha band. Let's zoom in a little bit better so you can see that. There's that 12.5 alternating with the 10.5. And again, his Lesh scales all the way down to 0. Even though his blood volume pulse has dropped out of the 90s into the 80s, he's still a very stressed person. This is a brainwave profile on me that was done by Tamara Lau about 2 months ago. It's eyes open and talking, so there's some good beta amplitudes in there. Unwanted beta amplitudes, but nevertheless verbal would excite that beta anyway. You can see that I'm on a 5.6 on the Lesh state, so physically very relaxed, and the blood volume pulse is down here at 76, 73, 78. So there's not a settling down, but there's not a heck of a lot of excitation either. And so these were the brainwaves that Tamara was looking at, and thinking, okay, I can draw these brainwaves. But then at the 6 minute point, while we were still talking, something happened, and you'll see it happening. There it goes. And I looked up at Tamara, and Tamara's eyes got really big. And she didn't say anything. She was waiting to see what was going to happen. And I said, what? And she said, your brainwaves are going crazy. And I said, I'm having a hot flash. And you can see that the Lesh state, Lesh scale has decreased. The stoplights are flaring. The SEMG at the bottom is problematic. With this red, it's turned this red, and then the brainwaves are clearly disappearing. This is what stress can do to you. Even if I were to increase the amplitude here, there's still no brainwaves on the right, and sometimes no brainwaves on the left. And this went on for about 3 minutes. And I could feel the electrodes moving as my pulse in my head pounded. The GSR is still dropping.
You got to feel sorry for people who have hot flashes. Kundalini or hormonal, the effects are really shocking. And so further down into the session, all of that calmed down. The Lesh now is back up to 6. The blood volume pulse, the pulse rate is more at 64. The brain waves are quiet. I'll zoom out so you can see that a little bit better. There's some activity up here that may have something to do with a questionable hookup or some electrical noise, but they're normal brain waves by now, compared to the brain waves of stress. And then lastly, because we always want to leave brainwaves on a good note, this is a meditation I did to a Monroe Institute track called Transcendence. And you can see that the Lesh state is 5.9. The brainwaves are very stable. There are even some higher consciousness states here. The heart rate is, at that time, this was a good heart rate for me. My heart rate has dropped since then, but 74, 75, 76. Nice patterns, lots of stability, and some gamma that actually is forming on its own during this session because of the profundity of the patterns. This is what we want to see. A quiet mind, a quiet heart rate, and lots of relaxation on the GSR.
That hot flash, I'll tell you that. I can't think of any worse stress than that. And the interesting thing is that what sets them off is stress. Feeling stressed will light you up like a Roman candle. For me, that and spicy or sweet foods, but stress will do it faster than anything else. And it lasts 5 minutes, you know. It's just, I've been on the blood volume pulse before and watched my temperature raise and other people's temperature raise 12 degrees. 12 degrees, and the heart rate 10, 12 beats a minute, just shoots through the roof. And of course, it's not just hot flashes, because the hot flash is just a symptom of the stress response itself. And man, we have such a stressed world, especially now. I'm watching the whole Trump phenomenon on cable news. I just love to watch MSNBC, and luckily I meditate every day, so I don't get involved in the nitty-gritty of it. You know, it really doesn't have an emotional effect on me. I'm standing back and watching. Well, I'm trying to watch it from a more transcendent space, but people are just going nuts. And so it's not even just our own stress that is the problem. I mean, we can be in an immediate environment, or even a large environment, a global environment that's stressed, and that will have direct effects on us. Would you agree? So let me just ask then, if you will, for comments, anything that you might want to address to Bob, Christine, or David, before we start talking to them about remedies for stress. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they would like to bring up?
They're all denying.
Yeah, right. The river in Egypt.
I'm ready to hear the remedies.
All right. Well, who wants to start then with us? And do you want to just talk about the remedies, or do you want to do your exercises? You three.
I can make a point before we get into remedies.
Please.
Just in you talking about the world at large and how, you know, the watching Trump and that can be very stressful. It's an adaptation process primarily. It's our fundamental drive. We're born, prior to being born, I'm sure it has some impact, but we're born, we have to survive or perish. Right in that moment, like everything that we do to teach our mother to hold us, to feed us, to anything we do is an adaptation requirement. We need to adapt to the environment around us. So we need to communicate that we're cold, that we're hungry, that we're thirsty, because that's fundamentally what stress does. It's an adaptation response. So it's helping us adapt to the environment around us. That's not just my study, that's the street outside, the town I'm in, the country I'm in, the world I live in, that we have to adapt to that. And I think that to be proactive, to not have to go through the lessons that Christine, Bob, or myself went through, not to go through burnout, you have to understand why it's in your best interest to be proactive. Now, I was watching Chelsea Handler on TV a few weeks ago. Fun woman to listen to. No barriers, no boundaries. Everything's on limit. And she was kind of describing this DNA test that she'd done. And the doctor sat opposite her around the table and told her how much cellulite she should have based on her DNA. He told her how tall she should be, what her breast size was likely to be. He told her a number of personal things that came from her DNA. What he didn't tell her, that I'm fairly confident was in there, was her life expectancy. It would be encoded in her DNA based on genetics how long she could live. He didn't tell her that. But he also didn't tell her that if she carried on drinking and smoking and doing other things that would make it difficult for her body to live to its greatest potential, that she'd be dying sooner than that. Like, if we give our bodies a lot of wear and tear and we live in terrible surroundings, then we're not going to live to our maximum potential DNA encoded life expectancy. So in the Canadian Institute of Stress, which is where I studied with Hans Sellier's last postdoctoral student, they have a program how to lengthen your life by 11 years. And they look at near vision blurring, skin elasticity tests, tests to see like how quickly you can grab a piece of card or something that's dropped through your fingers. Actually, it's a yardstick. All tells them how old your body is, which is not the same thing as how old your chronological age is. Your body would be showing you how, to your best potential, you're living up to your greatest likelihood of living a long life. Your age is a number, but how your body is wearing and tearing is determining your life expectancy, not the number. If you'd have told her, Chelsea, you can live till you're 80, it wouldn't mean anything. If she was smoking, drinking, doing things, not eating a good diet, not looking after herself, she could have more or less cellulite. It all kind of impacts us. And I think the point that you reach the limit is when you can no longer adapt, when you can no longer do the thing that you first have to do when you're born, adapt. When you can't do that anymore, you're done. And Hans saw that you could put a rat in a freezer and it would adapt to that terribly cold temperature. It would spend a lot of effort adapting to it. And when you take it out of the freezer and you put it back in with another rat, the other rat lives, but the first one doesn't, because it's exceeded its maximum capacity to adapt. Its adaptation energy has been spent. And Hans believed that we wake up in the morning refreshed because while we're asleep, we don't literally do this, but we go to the freezer and we take out another block of adaptation energy and we feel great the next day. Oh, I'm over my marathon. I'm over my difficult work thing. We feel okay, but we've depleted unreplaceable life adapting energy. And I think that that's obvious that would be encoded in your DNA. How much capacity to adapt do you have will determine how long you live. And if you adapt badly or put yourself into terrible circumstances, you spend your life very quickly. I think if we've all got a certain amount of energy to expend and we're like a radio controlled car, we could drive around and do fun stuff, or we could bat up against a wall endlessly until eventually we die. And I think it's useful to do stuff with life because stress is the cost of living. There's no escaping that. You are going to spend stress energy living. I'm going to use energy to get up off my chair. I'm going to use it to go downstairs to get a sandwich. I can eat calories and I can have energy for doing mass muscle movements, but I can't consume adaptation energy. It's in my DNA.
So there's good stress, and there's good stress that moves you to get done what you need to do, such as you're sitting there watching television like a couch potato and eating potato chips and thinking, oh, I'm so relaxed. And then suddenly you remember, oh my God, there's no money in my bank account. So whoop, up you go. And then you get to work.
They do talk of stress and eustress in science as being that there's good stress, bad stress. I don't know that that's true. I think maybe Bob will kind of chime up about that, but I think there's stress, and it's the energy that you spend. Now, I'm not really good on heights. So if someone said to me, I'm going to take you in a plane, you're going to jump out of a plane, give me a parachute and whatnot, fantastic. Even if it's free, that costs too much for me. Because if I'm freaking out and screaming inside about the fact that I have to jump out of a plane, any price to pay for that's too much. But if I love it, like one of my teachers, Jeff Side, flies a glider. Just there, no power, is just flying around the Phoenix desert in a glider in his 60s. He enjoys that. That would freak some people out. I know I have a client whose partner goes constantly to jump out of planes. Every weekend he's going to a different place to jump out of planes. He loves it. So it's a very good return on his investment. He spends money on flights and hotels to jump out of planes, and it's worth it for him. But as I've said to you, anything is too much to pay for me. Return on investment is the single most important criteria for spending the stress energy that you are going to spend anyway. It's not a particularly gratifying life to sit in a temple for 50 years and then eventually pass away having done nothing but sit.
Well, how do you know soon enough before the rubber band pops and then loses its elasticity and doesn't get usable again?
That's listening to the body, that's listening to the brain, that's listening to what is my real response to this? Is this enjoyment or is this panic? Is it excitement or is it anxiety? Like we can see it in the mind mirror, but we only know subjectively, is this a pleasant experience for you or not? And lots of people put up with life and they struggle through it and they suffer things. They're, so stoic that they're not really listening to their body telling them, I don't like that you do that. I prefer you eat vegetables. Stop feeding me with this. Like, we get signals constantly. Constipation's a message from the body, right? Everything's a message. It doesn't have to be one through the mind mirror. It could just be your blood pressure. We need to pay attention.
I just want to jump in here. I feel like I'm a kid again, because this is like when I was a kid, I used to watch the girls doing double dutch, with the rope, and I would watch they would be waiting to jump in, right? Of course, I would always ask, can I get in? They would let me turn the rope, but they would never let me get in there. I always wanted to do, I watch those girls win the McDonald's thing. I go, wow, I wish I could do that. I have to jump in here because David, you have, I have two comments, okay? Because what Judith has asked and what you have brought up, talking about Hans Selye with the adaptation issue, these are really large issues. I'm in the consciousness society, and so there are people actually talking about what you're talking about from polar opposite positions, from above and below, and et cetera. So it's very interesting that you would raise that issue as it's one of the things that I'm actually familiar with. I don't think this is the place to get into teleological, ontological, epistemological aspects of consciousness and reality. But there's two things that I want to say, because you got me. I was so excited. I go, when am I going to be able to jump in here? Okay, I gotta come all the way to Toronto or Pennsylvania so I can get in here. So here. Okay, so the first thing is I want to thank you, David, for giving me a high-level synchronicity, because when you brought up the Canadian Institute of Stress, I have a whole section in my study that deals with the Canadian Institute of Stress, and they have a 20-question questionnaire, and they have a 6 I'm trying to think of the frame. There's a model where there's 6 types of stressor, like the worry ward. You know, you can do a test. What kind of stressed out person are you? I always like the worry ward person that, you know, they're wringing their hands no matter what happens. They go, "You just won the lottery," and they go, "Oh my gosh." They're worried about money, but now they have money, right? And so it's always great fun to listen to you, David, because I go, I never know what this guy is going to say. And I said, you know, talking about Hans Selye, okay, so this is great, because Hans Selye, you know, has, for many people, he's considered to be the father of stress. So, so that's the first thing. So thank you for the synchronicity there. The other issue or point that I want to raise is when you're talking about adaptation energy, because about 2 years ago, I had a lunch with one of my mentors, and he said almost exactly what you said. And we were talking about sleep deprivation. He says, well, you know, you can never make up your sleep loss, etc. And I said, I don't agree. So, and then Christine and I had a long dialogue about that. And I said, I wonder why he said that. But it's at the core is that he's a systems guy, and he's saying a very similar thing to what you're saying, is that, you know, once you only have so much in the pot, and once it's gone, you know, that's it for you. So what I want to add to that is the epigenetic aspect that you opened the door for me to come in there by saying, if you do this, you can live 11 years longer. So Dr. Bruce Lipton and some other people have done a lot of studies talking about comparing saying that Charles Darwin was wrong. He had it all wrong. Okay, people don't like to hear that because this is like a serious paradigm shift issue. But I actually agree with it. You know, for a long time, Dr. Bruce Lipton was considered to be a heretic in the medical community. But now, this is like 15 years later, and they've come around to, you know, smelling the coffee. He wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. And I remember when I found that book on a bookstore shelf, and I started reading, and I was flipping around. I said, what is this guy saying? He's saying that you can actually, whatever your DNA is, it can be changed. In fact, our cells, in fact, our body, if you think about our skin, your skin is actually your largest organ. And so that is intelligent, and it can do the kind of shifting that you're talking about, David, and that you showed so clearly there, Judith, on that mind mirror. I got to tell you, you know, I knew people were in distress when they're having hot flashes, but I got to tell you, I think men have hot flashes too. So it's not. I don't think it's just women that are flashing. If you see some of the behaviors, I know, Oksana, you know what I'm talking about. So, but in fact, Christine has commented sometime that she noticed that the range in my body temperature. Sometimes, you know, I'm sweating profusely, and then 10 minutes later, I'm shivering, and you know, I'm not sick. And so it's just having an awareness. So to wrap up, David, what I'm saying is that when we come to Toronto, we've got to play Rummy Cube, and we're going to continue this discussion, and you're going to take one side of the seesaw, I'm going to take the other side, because I'm saying that I very much believe that once you learn how to use your mental capacities and tie it into your emotional capacity, which I believe is what you're showing people with the mind mirror, that's a game changer in terms of longevity and making the distinction between your chronological age and your biological age. And so one of the things that I hope to demonstrate during this recording, if Judith will allow, is a technique that it surprised me. And here's what I mean. We could talk all day, but isn't it nice when somebody walks up to you and they go, hey, what's going on with you? And I go, what do you mean? They go, you look different. You look younger. I go, really? They go, what are you doing? So to me, measurement is good, but when people, maybe you haven't seen someone for a long time and they come up to you and they go, hey, what's happening, right? That's a good sign. Or in terms of feedback, the qualitative feedback. So the thing is that I just want to say that this is very exciting to be you know, Judith, the equipment that you have here with the mind mirror, I'm get ready to do some serious work, because we've got, I mean, there are no published studies with the type of stuff that we can bring to the table here, and I'm going to make David earn his Rummy Cube points.
Rummy Cube.
It's a great game.
I think I'm hearing you, and I just want to say, in my little retaliation to that, or my joining in on that, whichever way you'd like to see it, that we should focus on capacity, not potential. You don't have the potential to live till you're 500, Bob. It's not in your potential. It's not encoded in your DNA as a possibility. You have the capacity to live up to whatever your potential is, but your capacity is going to be impacted by your diet, how you're living, and all of those things. So I get the biology of belief, and I think it's a gorgeous book, good lectures, but let's not confuse the ability to do things that aren't in your DNA.
Okay, so I agree with that. Here's the thing. We live in a 55+ community, and I can't tell you, when I go to the clubhouse, that there's so many people sitting at the table that are over 95 years old. In fact, we actually know, I don't know how many people that are over 100 years old. This is like amazing. And so I don't know whether, so my thing is that it doesn't matter to me, from my standpoint, whether it's the DNA or epigenetic. I mean, I want to live to be 150 if it's possible. I want to live to 125. And that's all I'm saying. You know, life expectancy has changed. And so one of the things that I know is that the more I learn, that how much I don't know. But what I'm saying is that my experience and is that what I can see is that we know, and we're seeing, including the research, many people are living to be past 100 years old. And so although it's still a small percentage, that whatever the cause is diet or nutrition, or the fact that, you know, they live the life in a flow state, I'm all for it. I just want to be there.
Well, how does, if I may ask all of you, and also everyone else here, how does meditation fit into this picture? Because there is some kind of force that we encounter in those lower frequencies that is rejuvenating.
I think it's about balance, Judith. You know, when Bob was talking about the centurions that we know, what I've observed is they've lived their lives a certain way. A friend of mine just celebrated her 100th birthday. Her writing is better than mine. Her hand is steadier than mine. Her mind is still sharp. She makes jokes. I have to work to keep up with her. She's lived a stable life in terms of work, of rest, of relationship. So I don't know if it's genetics, the life she lived. I think there's a pretty large unknown factor, and we have to admit that. You know, as much as we learn, as much as we know, whether we're following a good diet, whether we're getting the right rest, whether we have great relationships, there's a wild card. We're also, maybe this is controversial, we're also spiritual beings. We don't know. There are mutations all the time. Sure, we've got DNA, we're primed for this, but there's always an exception. I've seen exceptions so many times. I have a cousin who, she won't tell her age. I called her and I'm like, why are you living alone? She doesn't want to be dependent on anyone. She finally moved in with her daughter, who's 70+, and she is, well, I don't know how old she is because she won't tell her. I can't, but she's over 100 years old.
And she lives in Canada, actually.
She's over 100 years old.
She's over 105.
I can't give her name because she doesn't want anyone to know her age. And her daughter said, don't tell Mom that I told you her age. And again, her mind is still sharp. And then there's someone who's 50 and they have cognitive impairment, they have arthritis, they're in pain, they can't move. So as with all the advances that we have in science and information, I still think there is a large unknown in the human life experience. And I have always practiced centering exercises, not necessarily meditation. It's been different things at different times. It's been doing breath work, which maybe that's meditation. It's been doing my Ideokinesis, which is using imagery. So through the years, I've had different centering practices that I've done, and that just helps me to stay grounded, to feel calm. And I think many times and I do this, I love doing it, we're looking for externals to save us. But when your core can be strong, when you can be grounded and content within yourself, I think that leads for a sounder life. You know, when you're not always looking outside yourself, which again, I do that every now and then. And I notice when I'm doing that, I'm really throwing away my ability to heal and my power. That, hey, I'm pretty much full by myself. I want to be with other people and meet and interact, but you know, am I going to be arguing all day long with someone? Am I going to be competing all day long with someone? And so I look at the whole and a balance of how I'm living my life, where I'm finding support, where I'm finding like-minded people, where I'm finding stimulation, where I'm finding growth. And I think there was someone I met, no, I didn't meet him. My teacher, Andre, talked about him, and they asked him, you know, when do you practice? It was his Tai Chi master. He said, well, I'm practicing now. I'm doing it 24 hours a day. So that your whole life can be your meditation. You can be meditating 24/7. How are you defining meditation? Do you see what I'm saying? So there's so many ways that we can stay healthy, but in terms of life, you don't know. There's some babies, they're 6 months old and they just don't wake up the next day. What is that? So I think when we admit that there's something unknown in our existence, that alone releases it. We have the ability and the capacity to heal, but we get carried away. I think when you were talking about the news, you know, we look at the news, the world's going to end. Really? They said that. I'm still waiting for the shift. They promised me a shift. I want my shift. Where is it? You know, so come on. What are you going to buy into? And that's what causes our stress. Where are you following the fear trail? You know, what was it? Y2K. Everything's going to stop. Oh my gosh. It's coming, it's gone. So when you can rely on yourself, I need people. I love having support. I mean, I love having Bob here by my side, but it's a certain centeredness and being whole. And if that's meditation, then yeah, go for it.
I interviewed this futurist one time, Stephen Schwartz. He is he was, you know him? He was at the beginning of the remote viewing movements and studies, everything way back. And he said he does all these remote viewings with people and has them look into the future, and he won't tell anybody what they find, which is kind of cruel because, you know, they're all finding the same things. But he will say one thing that I think is wonderfully reassuring and actually directly relates to what you're saying there. And he said that what everyone said and what he knows, and I think we know too, is that the earth defaults to harmony.
Right.
You know, we have a homeostasis in the body, the brain that gets overwhelmed and, as I said so many times, disorganized and unstable, flaring, and those broken points of consciousness, it will shut down. It will shut down. The person who can't sleep, they will collapse. And in a way, that's a default to harmony, because down you go, and while you're down, you get the chance to go back up. You know? And I think will is a factor also, the will to survive. I was really struck by what you said, David, about the whole idea of self-preservation. And I wonder if in the end, that is what causes body, mind, spirit stress is that you feel threatened. You sense that you're threatened.
I'd rather think of it as a threat response than a stress response. I mean, Hans, years after calling it stress response, thought, oh, I should have called it the strain response or something else. I think we could call it the demand response, the requirement response. Any time that we have to change what we're doing, stand up, move across the room, open an envelope, pay a bill, take money out of my pocket, it's all a threat to my ability to be okay. To just sit, anything I have to do anything but sit is stressful. And if I have to worry about the world at large, that's stressful. It puts a demand on me. Like when Christine was saying that to look outside of her for someone as a healer or a helper, or to look outside, we do that. We look to parent, we look to God, we look to someone to protect us because we're in a state of threat. If we aren't feeling threatened, I don't know that we have to look outside for that. I think if we feel okay, then there is no internal threat for us to need an external knight in shining armor to help us with. Like, there's no need to look for help if you don't have a problem. If you're in a state, as you were kind of talking, I was thinking of meditation as harmony, and that we've got disharmony around us. And that when we're in a flow state, a harmony state, that is a meditative state. But it's not a ponderous, self-reflective state. But it's a state of not being under threat.
And along that same line, and going back to something Christine said, made me think of this. I'm working for days and days on this wonderful article for the next newsletter, the next Eureka Times. I hope you'll like that name. Anyway, it's on PMH Atwater, who did 5,000 interviews with near-death survivors. And she said that what they all said, and what she herself, as a person who died and came back to life 3 times, said governs the dimension that you find yourself in after death, is not your thoughts, it's not your deeds, it's not your behaviors, it's your level of self-acceptance, self-understanding, and self-love. Isn't that interesting, Christine? Because that's basically what you were saying about the women who have those very, very long lives, is they self-regulated, and they had to. What makes you self-regulate but a love for yourself, a caring for yourself, a desire to be balanced, wouldn't you say?
Yes, the world teaches us, maybe it's part of marketing, that we're defective. We're something. So I remember one Saturday watching infomercials, and I said, oh my goodness, if I have this, my life will be perfect. The music comes up, the lights are glowing, and it's keep looking for something outside of yourself to be complete. But if you look at yourself as whole and complete, and as David was talking about, without that fear, I mean, many times we're afraid of something, we're terrified. It comes, it happens, it goes, and it's like, oh, what was I so worked up about?
Yes.
So it's that ability to self-regulate and to say, you know what, things are pretty good. And the more we can realize that and stay in that state, the stronger we are, the more content we are. And we can be comfortable with it. It's as if, and I think what you were talking about too, with what's going on in the world, it's this thing to get us worked up in a frenzy. That what would it be? I mean, we use this all the time. One of the coaches that I've worked with, she asked the question, would it be all right if life got easier? And for most people, they can't imagine that. Wait, I must have my angst. I must have my problems. What would it be if life got easier?
And may I just say very briefly, I think that's Maria Namath.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Great person for everybody to read. Absolutely stunning author. She's written a book called The Energy of Money that really makes you look at your relationship to money, and in the process of focusing on that one issue, she ends up talking about exactly what you talked about. Why not make it
She does
easy?
some beautiful work, and her other book, I believe it's Mastering Life's Energies.
Beautiful.
Such a beautiful book, and she talks about this aspect of fear, that you know, the flight, fight, or freeze response. And when you know that about yourself, and when you can identify that, you're able to operate better in the world, and it's very freeing. It's very free.
Judith, I just want to say we'll be interviewing Dr. Maria Nemeth next week for a podcast, and she has a new book coming out. Do you remember the title of it?
Her new book will be on forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Yeah, I didn't remember that, but we're actually interviewing her next week.
Wonderful, wonderful. It feels like, well, but first let's ask if anyone else here has questions or comments that they would like to ask or make.
I just wanted to sort of say something to, you know, what everybody's talking about, epigenetics. And unfortunately, I don't have the reference to this, but I think it was at the Tucson Conference on Consciousness Studies a couple of years ago. I was listening to a speaker, and I don't remember who the speaker was. I'd have to look all this up again, but they were talking about epigenetic changes in meditation. And they said there were something like 40 different genes that were markers for stress. And that people who had meditated for the period of, I think, 8 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever it was, they found that these 40 different markers changed into a normal range. So that these stress markers epigenetically changed during meditation. So there was an actual decrease in the amount of stress people had that was measurable in the changes in the genetic profile. I'd have to look that up. You know, I think I could probably track it down again and let you know, or send you a link to it if I can find it.
Gary, I just want to say that I'm actually very familiar with that. I have yet to go to the Tucson conference, but I actually have quite a bit of research which bolsters what you're talking about. It's not just that it changes those genes. It also because this is in the accelerated learning literature, it beneficially impacts the hippocampus. It beneficially impacts the striatum and other areas of the executive decision-making parts of the brain, so that you know, when we do this, our thinking processes, in fact, even the telomeres, they've shown that which affects longevity is directly tied to the benefits of meditation and other processes that have the effect of meditation, like working on the mind mirror, etc. So there's loads of research which show not only what you're talking about, but that an enhancement of cortical thickening of certain key brain regions that have to do with you know, keeping our memory sharp and things like that. Also, a very key point, there's a guy, Dr. Srini Pillai, Harvard Medical School, where there are a whole bunch of studies where what meditation does is it changes or shifts amygdala reactivity, which is, you know, an example would be like road rage. You know, somebody cuts you off and then you're after them or pounding on the steering wheel. So learning how to reshape, it's actually called amygdala reshaping. So meditation is one way that can be done. And in Dr. Srini's research, he actually talks about how when companies that are led by CEOs, where they have learned how to beneficially shape their reactivity and not use fear to motivate people, those companies are actually more profitable and get more done.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I would be very interested in seeing your doctoral dissertation if it's available.
Sure.
I'm very interested in the nitric oxide.
Sure. In fact, I sent Oksana, which she may share with the group. I have a PowerPoint on. It may be the longest PowerPoint on SlideShare. I think it's 156 slides. So you know, I've been told it's a little too long, but I sent the link to Oksana, and it has a whole layout of the nitric oxide paradigm. the types of 3 different types of nitric oxide. But the bottom line is the explaining the benefits of the spiking and with the bad stuff that happens when your nitric oxide is flatlined.
Great, love to see that.
I really like to talk about the governing force within the practice of meditation that reduces stress and brings everything into harmony as light, just light. As you dive down across that alpha bridge into your subconscious mind, where there is not so much, so many spikes, so much perturbation, so much turmoil, and then there's just this wonderful quiet. And I mean, this is an esoteric belief that I wouldn't attribute to anybody but myself and some others who would agree. But I believe that what happens is that once this turmoil has disappeared, then the static, you could call it, has disappeared, then this light is able to flow into your system. You are able to flow into this light, and it has a harmonizing effect that actually raises consciousness and moves us to a level of transcendence where we don't get so incredibly caught up in the dualities and the emotional turmoil of the world. But it's also true that you could sweep all that aside and simply say that once you move into meditation, you've simply moved into a level of focused awareness where the voluntary and involuntary nervous systems come into, as Max Cade said, synchronization. And when that happens, the breath releases and slows down. With the heart rate releases and slows down. And those are incredible stress busters, just incredible stress busters alone. And on the mind mirror, when we see those effects, that's when brainwaves become profound. And they don't become profound until people have slowed their heart rate and slowed their muscle tension and reduced sweat gland activity. It's always the case. Now, there are some few cases where you can have profound brainwave patterns and have arousal in the body. But those are the people that I think are the most at risk, because then they have a body-mind split.
Judith, can I jump in here?
Sure.
I think you said something very important, and I know I've been in different groups over the years that this issue has come up. So I just wanted to bring it to the fore here. You know, this issue with the brainwave patterns that I think it's important to really know that the brainwave patterns it's just pointing the way to something. It's not the thing. And I think sometimes like we get caught up into like, oh, that's, you know, the pretty pictures, like, you know, if I'm with some neuroscientists and they're showing me fMRI pictures and I go, okay, that's nice. Like, okay, these are pictures when this is the neurobiology of someone when they're in love. But the pictures don't actually tell the story, you know, like, okay, so you're over here, this center of the brain lights up when you're infatuated. Okay, but it doesn't tell you anything about what it's like, you know, why the person's going crazy and can't think, right? So that I just wanted to mention that aspect that I am so excited to be here because your equipment has a level of detail and specificity that many other types of neurofeedback systems don't have. That's the first thing. So that's my first compliment. The second thing is that your equipment has gone through so many phases of 1, 2, 3, 4. What, you're a Mind Mirror 6 now? Is it 6? So that is tremendous over so many years. And then the more I read about Max Cade and Anna Wise, I mean, just the history of how the Mind Mirror came about, very, very exciting. And so I just wanted to just tie in the aspect that to remember that whenever, like you were saying, like when you showed your pattern with the hot flashes, it's really not about what's on the screen. It's like what was happening with Judith. Like, oh my gosh, you know, like, you know, I'm flashing, you know, it's, you know, and you're not at a disco.
Yeah, right, right, right.
And on another level, it's really not funny in the sense that, you know, anyone that hasn't had that experience, you know, this is a serious thing. Like, you know, you walking even 2 feet in another person's high heel shoes. You know, someone that's never had a serious hot flash like your 3 minutes, they can't really know what it's like to have that. And you're like, because your whole system, it shows your whole neuroendocrine system, your nervous system, your brainwave pattern. So it's not just one thing, but it was pointing the way. And that's my whole point, that you know, sometimes we get so locked into, you know, because the reason I mention that is that, you know, we go to different trainings and we hear people, you know, and it's like, well, we do it like this, and this is the only way to know something. No, okay, so you do Feldenkrais, you do Alexander, you do Ideokinesis. So there are many paths. I just wanted to mention that I like the quantitative aspect, but just it has to be paired with what your first person reports. And I think that's what the neuroscience community is finding out, that before everything was third person objective, as if there's really any objectivity per se. And again, I keep bringing this one point up. Take the brainwave pattern, 38 hertz to 42 hertz, right? High beta, low gamma, right? Unless you ask the person what's happening with you, it could be a range of things from, you know, oh my gosh, I'm in this high blissful, compassionate state and self-compassionate state, or they're in this high anxiety. And I just have to say this because the conversation before, where it made me think of Judith, when you mentioned about the self-love, it made me think of Whitney Houston. Here she had all this opportunity, she had all these gifts, a great voice, but she didn't love herself. And so I'll end on this note. The George Benson song, when he sang, "The greatest love of all is learning to love yourself." And I think that's the bottom line when it comes down here. It's just not a narcissistic love. It you know, extends to agape, and it's where you really, you know, as a person said to us, oh, I'm cool because I was loved, and that they feel that. And I can imagine that would show up on the mind mirror as a total homeostasis type brainwave pattern.
It's got to be the biggest challenge of all is to love yourself, because you are the one who knows all of your flaws. And if you can overcome that self-doubt and judgment and analysis and connect with the love itself. I mean, you have to go below your judging beta to connect with just pure love. And if you can connect with pure love in yourself, well, then you can extend it out to everyone else. That has got to be the best homeostasis for stress reduction of all, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. When we work with emotional freedom technique, I hope some of you are familiar with that approach. One of the things that we do when we set up an issue, you know, and it's tapping and it's working with the energy flow. But one of the things we do is we say, even though I have this issue X, whatever it may be, I totally, completely, and unconditionally love, accept, and forgive myself. Now, a lot of people can't say that. The best they can do is say, I'm okay, you know. But we kind of work with that, you know, and we kind of get them around to a point where they begin to be able to say, I accept myself, and maybe even I love myself. But, you know, you have to start someplace. But that's ultimately where you want to go, is you love, accept, and forgive yourself for whatever the issue may be.
Gary, I want to ask you, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Can you just briefly talk about the why, the people that would have difficulty saying that? What in your experience, what would be the why?
It would be because of childhood trauma, more often than not. You know, they've gone through so many issues as in childhood and growing up, and maybe in relationships with people, that they really don't accept themselves anymore because they think they're at fault. for whatever happened. And it's a gradual process of bringing them through that and clearing that out so that they begin to heal that childhood trauma, which is frequently there. But there are layers, you know, you just have to kind of work through the layers. And you just allow things to come up as they come up. And as each thing comes up, you just say, I love and accept myself, or I accept myself, or I'm okay. And you know, kind of go down on that. Maybe Donna has something she'd like to add to that.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say that in the years that I've been a naturopathic doctor, the thing that has been my best stress reducer is learning how to do the long, slow, even diaphragmatic breathing. And that heart math type of training where we do that kind of breathing is the thing that I teach my patients whenever they come in and they're anxious or they're having a hard time relaxing, and they're I do a lot of body work, and so whenever their muscles are just as hard as rocks, I just have them start breathing that way and stop talking, stop, you know, just get out of beta land and start to do the breathing, and then they gradually start to relax as I'm working with them. And then that ability to love themselves is something that we can actually see if a person has a hard time saying that, especially because there's someone listening. Ooh, that's arrogant for me to say I love myself. That would be just unacceptable to have someone hear me say that. Then by the time we've spent some time doing the emotional freedom technique, the tapping, the breathing, usually within 20 minutes or so, they get to where they can genuinely say, I love myself. And usually the first session, they actually get past that hump.
You know, you make me think about how maybe there is no such thing as external stress. Maybe it's really all internal stress, in the sense that it's about how we perceive it. And going back to Christine, talking about Maria Namath, I think she was the one who said, or maybe it was Gary, what's his name, who was the conflict reducer for the Unity churches, said that no one and nothing can harm me. That's how, if you can accept that, and if you can believe that, then all fear disappears. And then going back to David's bringing up that idea of self-preservation, well, if you can believe that, then nothing threatens your self-preservation. Therefore, nothing can stress you.
Right. The thing is, you see, the way our society is set up, we're really socialized to fear. I started teaching high school, and when I was teaching high school, I got very disappointed and disillusioned because the children didn't know as much academically as I thought they should. And I said, let me get to elementary school. And it was there that I could see, because of the numbers, the way the public schools were set up. I was teaching in Brooklyn. With so many children in the classroom, we teach them to fear. You know, don't talk, don't move. It's the nature of the child to move and to talk. They're curious. So the way the educational system is set up is, it's punitive. If you do this, you're wrong. Are you a bad girl, a bad boy? You're a troublemaker. I was in the principal's office, and a young boy, he was there, and he was terrified, and he was marked as a troublemaker. And I said to him, I don't know where this came from in me. I said, you don't have to do this. He looked at me. I said, you don't have to be like this. Why at 9 years old should he be labeled as damaged goods? That's not fair. And the whole thing in most of the schools is, you're wrong. There's something wrong with you. And depending on who your parents are, maybe your parents reinforce that. Maybe your religious institution reinforces that. So that's in your body. That's in your emotion. That's in your mind. You're getting these words. You're not getting, oh, you are so wonderful. You are so bright. I see you doing great things. I allow you to move and to play. And schools don't even allow movement. They don't allow music. They don't allow art, most of them, you know? So A long time ago, I said to myself, it seems to me that most of life is undoing what you experienced in those first few years. It's
We see that in brainwaves. We see that in brainwaves. Children have fantastic brainwaves. They have beautiful awakened mind patterns, but then they start getting multitasking and getting forced into too many directions, and they stress, and hello, high beta.
You know, I just want to jump in here very briefly. You know, sometimes when I think of how the public schools are versus, private schools, and what I'm specifically referring to is, think of, like a Waldorf school or a Montessori school, and the way, first of all, you have the smaller class sizes, but the way that the approach, because all of the research that I see is so clear. It says the number one factor in outcomes for academic achievement for children is the teacher expectation. I could take the brightest kids, and in 2 days, you could shift that. Where these were the smart kids, the kids that would have been salutatorians, valedictorians, and just by telling them they can't do anything right, you're wrong, you're bad, you're no good. And so the part of the issue is that, when I look at like NLP, and I know, David, you would know a lot about this, when you see a situation where people are taught in a kind way and using their preferred style. So if a kid is visual, so the learning approach, you use visual approach. The person is digital, you use a digital approach. Person's auditory or kinesthetic. And so part of the thing is that there are a lot of kids that are kinesthetic learners, and then the person's up there lecturing to them. Well, they're not getting it. They can't. That's not how they learn. They like to touch stuff. They're tactile, you know what I'm saying? And then as Christine said, so much of, it's don't, not, and no, growing up. Don't do that. And it always stuns me when you see it go into another family context, and you see, oh, little Johnny, you can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. And I contrast that to, the parent dragging the little kid down the street by almost ripping their arm off. And, we've seen that all too often. So I just wanted to say, I don't have the solution here. I'm just saying that it saddens me when I know there are solutions, because you go to a Waldorf school, you go to a Montessori school, but those are private schools. They cost a lot of money. But the approaches that they have to learning work, and the self-image and the self-esteem of the children is just a beautiful thing.
I was a homeschooled college drop-in. I got to go to my postdoctorate college for naturopathic medicine as a homeschooled kid, and go straight in there. And it was a completely different thing. I was a teenager, and it was, nobody could imagine that I was as young as I was, because they saw me being more mature and more self-confident. Are you, Dr. Bob and Christine, are you in California?
No, we're in Florida, South Florida.
In Florida, okay. All right, great. Yeah, what I wanted to say something about this stacking order of the learning styles, and how we use the mind mirror to figure that out. And whenever we're teaching a workshop, a large group awareness training with the mind mirror as the tool, we do that early on in the class to find out how each person's channels of learning, or what takes them to beta, what takes them to alpha, what takes them to theta. We do the exercises and watch carefully how they're hooked up to see which kinds of input cause them to have more alpha flares, or more stable alpha bridge, or more theta. And a lot of times what takes them into beta, like for instance, if someone is a visual, the Donna Markova book of The Open Mind, we use that a lot. And if we see that their mind mirror reading is changing depending on what kind of meditation we're taking them through, then we make a note of that, and then give them the chart and let them see how they're stacked up on which which types of input, sensual input, causes what type of brainwave for them as a personal pattern that they were born with. And a lot of times it's brand new material for them. It's complete news to them that they never knew how they were stacked. What made them more beta? What made them more alpha? What made them more theta? And this mind mirror is the best way. You could even do that with children to find out early on how they were stacked for their best learning style. So we're really excited that we have that tool.
That's fascinating, Donna. I hope that at some point you guys will do a webinar on that. I think we would all find that extremely interesting.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. But I think that what you're all saying, maybe when you synthesize it all, is that if you have the inner resources to trust yourself and to have faith in yourself and to love yourself, then you also have the enough motivation to self-regulate and keep yourself balanced so you can live to be over 100 years old. And not allow external stressors to define your life, to destroy your inner locus of control. And so this has been really enlightening, this whole thing. I think this is one of our best ever webinars. It feels like we've really kind of run around the block, but in the end ended up in the same house with some useful ideas and tools that we can take into our work.
Well, Judith, let me run around the block and tag you. You know, since as a child we used to play tag, you know, and because you just brought up a key thing, locus of control. Okay, all the research says the same thing. When our locus of control increases, we feel safer, less stressed, and you know, you can get to the fun. And when it's reduced, right? Like, you know, like they did a lot of studies with people working on a job, and they take away, they don't have any say over how they do the job satisfaction goes down, and the numbers show that the people, you know, you have a high turnover rate, etc.
So it's up to us to keep that, no matter what pull there is, to keep that locus of control inside us. And I personally was probably born, I think I probably wasn't born as a type A, but boy, I remember growing up later in my teenage years as a type A and winding up into a terrible type A, and the only thing that saved my life was meditation, because of all the physiological effects, because of the inner peace and the you know, heightened perspectives that keep me in a more of a transcendent state and not so wrapped when I meditate every day. Now, I'll unravel as fast as anybody else, having been to the type A la-la land. But I think that the exercises that you're going to do for us today, if we decide we have time right now, and that meditation itself is by far the best stress buster. Would everybody here agree with that?
I agree. I also wanted to say real quickly that after I took the training with Anna Wise 16 years ago now, I used to be stressed at the end of my day of working with patients all day long, one after the other with no break in between. And when I realized through doing the mind mirror meditation that I could just zoom into a very instantaneous, open focus, quick 1 or 2 breath meditations instantly between patients, I would reboot in 2 breaths and have the next patient come in. And at the end of the day, I'd actually feel higher than a kite, because it doesn't actually take 20 minutes of sitting and meditating to do this slippery slope that you can get into quickly when you know what it feels like to key into it, because you've been there so many times before and you know exactly what state that is. You can feel it, and that personal mastery of self-regulation is the one that gives me that sense of stress reduction in a moment.
Beautiful.
I went on a different path, so I don't know whether, you know, had I found Judith sooner, she would have been my, you know, and Anna Wise work would have happened for me quicker. But I found that I had to start with the self-love and then do a lot of body things. So tapping was huge for me. And I did a lot of like subconscious work. So I felt like, and breathing. So I struggled with meditation. I kept trying to go to it until I got my body a bit more in line. And then my meditation then just flowed and it was a lot easier. So I'm not sure if was just my way or if that is some people's way, that it has to be some of their physiology before they can get into the better states of mind.
Cool.
I can think of as we're talking about it is, I think it has to do with self-talk, putting ourselves into that quiet meditative state or a semi-trance, and reaffirming for me, because meditation has been my MO ever since I can remember. I think it has to do with affirming that spark of divinity that is within me, that manifests all greatness and has all infinite capacity and potential for goodness. And so, and that divine spark within me knows the solution to whatever problem, and I can release that issue or whatever into the universe for it to be resolved through divinity, through my higher self, or whatever words you want to use for it.
Beautiful, beautiful. You just carried me there. Thank you. How about you, Tim?
I would say where I'm at right now is I feel a lot of distress in my environment, and when I can even tell when somebody sends me an email before I've even gone to my email, and I know there's something just comes into me, right? The stress levels. Oh, I'm feeling like there's a message, and I'm not going to like it. I guess what I do for myself that helps is certainly again get that distance from myself, right? So the witnessing of my own self, creating that separation from myself is something that helps. Meditation definitely helps. I haven't been able to get to that 2 breaths, and I'm in that state. That's certainly my hope with the Mind Mirror, is to be able to get there quicker. So I'm excited. I think the tools are here to help me get it, and I just got to do my work. So I can't just think it's going to happen with a magic wand. You know, I actually have to, plug in, but I'm excited what I'm hearing. And this is wonderful.
Excellent, Sue. David Slade, I don't see you, but that you're on. Can we hear from you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think meditation is definitely probably the ultimate practice. Also, playing soccer and weightlifting and those sorts of things, actually using my body helps a lot too.
Again, the body comes up. Poor body, so often forgotten. And we certainly wouldn't get very far without it, would we?
Well, it was there before the mind developed.
Well, are we ready then to have some experience? Tim and I being hooked up. I don't know if we'd have time to show people, but we could certainly analyze it and send it out to people later on, maybe look at a few patterns. How long would the Ideokinesis take, Christine?
I can do something very brief.
Okay.
2-3 minutes.
All right.
One of the easy things, it was what Donna talked about, breath. We're usually shortchanging ourselves on a breath. Imagine a baby. If you see a baby breathing, their entire body is moving, right? When they breathe in, because they don't have the muscular tension, they haven't learned to sit up, to stand, to walk. When you do that, you're engaging the muscles in a particular pattern. Once to move, you think about it. That's the ideo. Once you think, you're engaging the muscle patterns that you already have, which may or may not be the best movement patterns. So in Ideokinesis, you imagine the movement before you move. You can eventually move while you have the image, but I will give you just a little one on breath and lengthening your neck and making your head light, and see what that does.
Okay, ready to go, Christine.
Okay, so if you palpate your shoulders, you'll feel the bones at the end of your shoulder girdle. It's really your clavicle that goes across and your scapula. So just feel those bones at the end of your shoulder and imagine that the bones are moving wider across your shoulder and that it's going down. You don't have to push it down or move it. Just imagine that it's spreading out and going down. And at the same time, just At the back of your ears, you'll feel your skull bones, your occiput. Imagine that going up. Your head is pretty heavy on your body, but imagine that your head is a helium balloon. And just let your head float up. It's a light helium-filled balloon. And as your shoulders are moving out side to side, touching either wall, your head is floating up. You don't have to move. Just see it as a balloon. It floats all the way up. It can go up to the ceiling. And if your ceiling is open, it wasn't there, it can float up into the atmosphere, into the sky, into the sunshine. Your head is that light, and it floats up. And your shoulders are that wide and that broad. They can reach either side of the room. And as your head is light and your shoulders are wide, oh, you have space in your body, and your breath is freer, and your chest is able to expand, and you can take a fuller breath because you have space in your body. And just feel the air coming in and going out. And your head is light and floating up, and your shoulders are floating wide. And just experience that. And just be present in the room and come back. That's how brief one exercise can be. And basically what the Ideokinesis is, there are 9 lines of action in our body, places where we need more space or we need more support, because we're walking on 2 feet. And if you look, most animals, they're using all 4s. One of the practices that we do in Ideokinesis is to crawl on all 4s. That gives us a kind of stability that we don't have standing up, because usually our core muscles at the front of our body are not engaged. And that's where we get our tensile support. We want our compression support from our bones and our tensile support from our muscles. But we don't really study that or live in that. So as a dancer, I needed that. You know, we'll hear things like stand up straight. Nonsense. Your spine has curves. You want balanced curves. Your cervical spine has a curve. Your thoracic spine has a curve. Your lumbar spine and your sacral spine. And you just want that to come closer to the midline of the body. But in Ideokinesis, we don't force physical movement. We use imagery to bring the body closer to that central axis so that there's ease of movement without the effort.
I felt it work. Thank you. That was really nice. I thought, wow, you can mentally control your posture rather than trying to force your shoulders to go back.
Correct. Correct.
Do you have another one, or does Bob have another exercise to share with us? And Tim, this would be at the point that you'd look at your mind mirror and get your timer clock timing so you can write down somewhere marker 2 or whenever we start.
Okay. Bob has graciously said, go ahead, do another one, Christine. So
all right.
One of the things that we do to release the breath is to exhale. Usually if we inhale, we can inhale and hold our breath. But if we exhale, we're going to want another breath, or we're going to not feel too good. So if you just put your finger at the top of your neck, you'll feel your jugular notch, and below that your sternum. So just do a light tapping on your sternum. I don't know, I don't think you can see me with my camera. Just a very light tapping. It just breaks up the rhythm that's there. And then just let that tapping go. And you're going to exhale as if you have a straw in your mouth to get a stronger exhalation. And you're going to exhale like you're blowing through the straw, and then you're just going to breathe normally. So you exhale as long as you can by blowing through that straw. So you go. And when you're out of breath, just breathe normally. And just take a few normal breaths. And then just do another exhalation through the straw. And again, when you're all out of breath, just take a few normal breaths. And these are just very short, easy practices that you can do that don't take much time, but gives your body a little bit of attention so that you can get a break in your day. Nice. Very good. You look like you were totally there, Judith and Tim.
I'm certainly there. Thank you very much. How about you, Tim? Did you like it?
Yeah, no, I mean, very quickly, it bring on some calm. I think I need an extended period, more than probably 2 minutes, maybe go for 10, 12. I certainly feel, I think, maybe when you're starting to go through and you bring more awareness to yourself, you're more in touch with your own stress. And so I feel like I'm at a point right now, I feel it much more, my body, my stress level. So it could be increased stress coming in, or just could be a function of being more aware of the stress that I have inside of me. So it's kind of an interesting thing, because, I'm in a very stressful environment, but how much of it also is it just I'm becoming aware of the stress I'm more physiologically aware of what's going on in my body.
It's definitely the awareness. One of the things my teacher said to me when I started to study this, and I was shocked. It made sense, but it still shocked me, when he said that your body holds the memory of your lifetime. And in the class, many of us in the class at different times, it was a completely innocuous exercise, seemingly. Some people would start to cry. Some people would laugh uncontrollably, that there were things held in our body, our history, and it would come out in these exercises. I was surprised by that.
I like that. I like that thought.
How do you help people deal with those things? Do you say just keep breathing through, or is there something else you could do? You can certainly do some tapping, but in the Awakened Mind training, we would say, let's deal with the issue. Do you tell them to deal with the issue, Christine? And if so, how?
No, that was actually, and my instructor said that. He probably could have, he had the skill, but what he stressed was that was there to just give yourself a moment. Usually, if we disengaged from the image and disengaged from the palpation, because we would work with partners, and we would palpate different parts of the body. So usually when we removed that, the person came to quiet. My instructor really believed in keeping disciplines separate, that was something you could deal with someplace else who is a specialist with that. There are different techniques. For example, Alana Rubenfeld did a lot of Alexander work, and she was also doing therapy. And she said she'd go to some person, and this person was just talking to her, and she'd go to her Alexander teacher, and they were just dealing with the body, and she needed both. So she developed that in her technique. Whereas my teacher, he said, this is about alignment, and this is what we're doing. So that was how I learned it. So there's some people who combine it and, develop different practices of it. But most body work, there is some release phenomena that I found in each one.
I just want to jump in here, Judith. When Christine and we've been married now for 10.5 years, but when we were just friends, I don't know why I'm saying just, but because that's what underlies our relationship. We were friends first. And so the first time she demonstrated the ideokinesis for me, the reason I'm bringing this up is because, you know, I was one of those people that I like the hard, deep tissue massage, the barefoot shiatsu, get in there, walk on my back, you know. And so the ideokinesis technique is the opposite. It's like the difference between karate and kung fu and breaking boards and tai chi. And so ideokinesis is very gentle. And so when Christine touched me the first time, I think she did something. She took my head like this, and she had her hand on the back right here, just like 3 inches below on my spine. And she just was asking, she was actually leading me around the room. She was walking me like a horse, right? And so, but very slowly and very gently. And I could not believe how much stress relief I had. I said, how could something so gentle and be so effective? And so part of what I discovered in the literature is that, you know, in the stress literature, you have the hyper and the hypo side. Now, most of the stress literature is on the hypo side, you know, massage, things that slow you down, etc. But as they're discovering, you know, with running, you know, all these people taking spinning classes and things like that, that you know, there's the other end where you stimulate your sympathetic nervous system, like through the rapid breathing, et cetera, and it can actually lead to a similar state. And so it's what's happening with the stress is the bidirectionality. In fact, I have that just made me think, Oksana. I have a infographic which I can send, that actually shows the bidirectionality of these different states, you know, from ecstatic trance to samadhi. So that might be interesting to, I don't share it that often because most people aren't interested. So this is a bright group. So I would be happy to share that. But it actually shows the difference, you know, Fisher did a series of studies talking about there are only two state-bound phenomena, the ergotropic and the tropotropic. And so one is hyper and one is hypo. And so this ties directly into what you're doing here with the brainwaves, because I actually have another infographic where I actually show where, you know, I go from, you know, beta to alpha to theta and to delta, and then showing on each side, like when a person, you know, what's the brainwave pattern when a person is in high anxiety? What's the brainwave pattern when the person's in a hypnagogic or hypnopompic thing? So in any event, I know that was a little off track, but this is so stimulating for me. So.
You know, we're talking about stress needing to be resolved on the inside so that you're able to deal with the stress on the outside. So now, Tim, you've said that that you are more aware now of stress now that you're quiet on the inside. So I wonder, David or Bob, if Tim were your client and you're taking him into meditation, or in a psychotherapy session, and he starts to say, well, I've got all this stress, well, what would you do?
Well, just briefly, I'd ask him to point at it. I mean, he said, I've got all this stress in my environment. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Where? I don't
so hit a marker, Tim. This starts your next marker. Okay. Go ahead, David, take him through it.
Well, David, let me add one thing, so kind of give you a question to that, an answer to that question. Basically, I just sort of feel like internal shaking. I just feel like my whole body's shaking inside.
Right. But I mean, I'm not thinking at the moment of doing an intervention or something with you. I'm not in that mindset. Okay. But I'm not intervening. But I'm not intervening because I'm asking. You said I've got this stress in my environment, and I said quite jokingly, point to it. Where is it? Mm-hmm. With the intention of you realizing, well, shit, it's not out there. It's in here.
Okay.
And that it's your perception of it. The world could be exploding. There could be a mushroom cloud 5 miles from my house. I could be watching it going, oh, at last. Or I could be thinking, oh my God, where am I going to hide? Like that's a significant external stressor. However, if I'm looking forward to meeting my maker, that's a blessed experience for me to it be enraptured by. It's internal. It's all internal. Everything's internal. And so I would be working with the internal world of the person that I'm working with to get them to, well, if they're imagining daggers and swords coming at them, well, then I'd get them to imagine feathers and pretty things are coming at them. I mean, it's like, if you're going to imagine stuff and that's causing the problem, let's use the imagination to solve the problem. If it's a bodily felt thing, then I would imagine that using the body to, like, if I'm gripping my hands, I could imagine relaxing them, or I could just physically relax them, that it's not one or the other. It's a mind-body system. It's an integral thing that one leads to the other, leads to the other. Either is better. I would just work with wherever they're saying that the stress is, because that's where they are pretending that it is.
Judith, I have to just jump in again and just say, David is he just amazes me, because last night we watched the Twilight Zone episode that actually exactly what he's talking about. So I'm going, again, how does he do this? You know, these high level synchronicities, you know, we're going to have to get up to Canada sooner rather than later.
I've actually come to the bedroom. Sorry, guys.
David, I just want to jump in and agree with you completely. I taught stress management at undergraduate level for about 20 years, and I've been out of practice of that for about a decade now. And it's nice listening to everybody talking here, because it's reminding me of everything I've forgotten in the last decade. So, but anyway, one of the first things that we always taught in class was stress was basically how you perceived what was happening to you. It was rare that something out there was actually the cause of the stress. As you say, you could have a nuclear explosion going off, and it depends on how you perceived that nuclear explosion. Oh, good, I'm going to go to heaven now, or fuck, you know, it's all over, you know. So it was really the act of perception that creates the stress. And so you have to begin to deal with that at all levels that might be occurring. But anyway, just agreeing with you 100%. Good point.
I'm still concerned about Tim. So Tim, let's explore it for a minute. Close your eyes, if you will. I don't have any idea what I'm going to do, but I'm going to just close my eyes and see if I can maybe mind link with you and we can do something. And so just imagine a beautiful ocean in your mind's eye. And imagine how high the waves are. Just notice how high the waves are. And then notice if anything is swimming around in the ocean. And if so, notice what that is. And what is the energy of those other forms, if there are any? And now just notice that above you, in the sky, there is an opening. And you begin to feel like something beautiful is about to happen. There's almost a sense of anticipation, spaciousness. And the sky opens up. And there's a beautiful, beautiful light. And the light sparkles as it descends down, not just to one part of the ocean, but the entire ocean. Notice what happens now to the waves. And the energy of all inhabitants of the ocean. And just allow yourself to spread out, your consciousness to spread out in every direction, up and down, side to side. And notice how this light that's coming from higher than the sky all the way down to where you are, how this light has no waves at all in it. Only this really beautiful sense of peace. And how that sense of peace begins to just spread out into your body. Peace and calm. You breathe it in and it circulates. Circulates through your circulatory system, lymphatic system, every electrical cell in your body, all filling with peace. And then flowing up into your brain. Let that peace and light permeate your forehead and frontal lobes, quieting, calming, and moving on back to the middle of your head. All the way down to the brainstem. The mind and the body conjoining inside that peace. You just take a big breath and blow that peace out into the ocean. And notice what happens. Peace and flow. Comfort and safety. And then lastly, you find a way to anchor the light and the flow inside yourself. Just find a place in your body and anchor that feeling so that you can always go back to it anytime you want. And you might create a word or a symbol or a concept that can also serve as a landmark. And now when you're ready, in your own time, just taking all the time you need, come back to the outside space. Remembering what flow feels like. Did that help?
Yes, and there's still some, jitteriness, but it's interesting. It's kind of moved down lower in my body, so it's now sort of in the lower bottom of the spine. Feel some energy, bottom of my feet. It was nice. The word actually that I used as a marker is calm waters.
Oh, nice. May I ask, do you drink much caffeine?
I drink more than I used to. I probably have, 1 cup or 2 cups during the morning. I don't know. I guess I don't. It's not excessive, but I used to never drink caffeine, and then I needed to drink caffeine. So to kind of get me going in the morning. It's also a sort of a mood booster too.
Yeah, I use chocolate for that. Yeah, you know what? You might try your meditation without having any caffeine and see if you encounter that same jitteriness.
I will go ahead and see if I can see if there's a correlation between the coffee and the jitterness.
Hi, excuse me, Judith. Could I jump in here? And
Of course.
I wanted to
But bring your rope.
Excellent. I fell for that one. Excellent. Touche. Okay. So Tim, how are you?
I'm doing much better. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. So Judith had asked if you were a client, how would I approach it? So now having observed a little bit, it's clear that you may have some other things going on, like anxiety or pain, whatever we want to call it. So one of the things that I would do with you, I would do a quick exercise to see if we could begin to dissolve the remaining issues that you have, because one of the things that's really clear, it's like with doubt, like if you get rid of 99% of your doubt, what happens then? Right at the worst time, right? Pew, it hits you, right? So it's the same thing with whatever you have that you're feeling in your body, whatever that represents, whether that's anxiety or pain or stress, whatever you want to call it, it's still, some of it's still there. So the thing is that what we want to do is dissolve it so that you feel clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you game?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to actually do something that I hadn't planned on doing because I had wanted to spend the time with the tuning forks, but this will be fun. So I'm going to do a quick open focus exercise with you, and basically all that is I'll be asking you a series of questions, and it'll be about 10 to 15 seconds between questions, and just allow your mind and body to do whatever it wants to do. There's no, you won't be responding to my questions, and just merge into the experience of it. And so I'll ask you a question is, can you imagine the distance between your hands? So you're not going to try to say, oh, there's 3 or 4 inches between my hands. You'll just get an awareness of the space between your hands and just have that sense, okay? And so, as you already know from Judith with the mind mirror, when we close our eyes, most people start to generate alpha. So I'll ask you during this exercise to close your eyes. When you're ready, please take a moment to relax your posture. And when you're ready, please close your eyes. Can you imagine the space inside of your mouth? Is it possible for you to imagine the distance between your eyes? Can you imagine that as you inhale naturally, your body begins to fill with space? And equally and simultaneously, is it possible for you to imagine that as you exhale naturally, your body is left filled with space, surrounded by space, permeated by space, right where you are? Can you imagine the space inside of your left nostril? And as you become aware of that space, can you equally and simultaneously become aware of the distance between that space and the space between the fingers of your left hand and the space between the toes on your right foot? Can you imagine that you can become aware and or sense the space in which any remaining pain, stress, distress, or anxiety you may be feeling in your body, becoming aware of where in your body that space, that pain, that stress resides? And as you become more aware of that anxiety, stress, or pain, can you imagine that you have a sense of the thickness, the color, and the overall surface area of that pain, stress, or anxiety you are feeling? Can you imagine of bringing your attention right to the edge of your pain, stress, or anxiety, and now from the edge that you could see the heart or the core of your stress, pain, and anxiety? Can you imagine narrowing your attention to focus directly into the heart of your pain, stress, or anxiety? That is that place where your pain, stress, or anxiety is most intense. Fully immersing your attention into that space and neither rejecting nor resisting your pain, stress, or anxiety. Can you imagine that as you inhale naturally, your breath flows right through the heart of your anxiety, stress, or pain? And equally and simultaneously, as you exhale, can you imagine that your breath flows down and through the heart of your pain and out of your body and begins to dissipate and goes wherever it wants to go? is it possible for you to now broaden your attention so that you are now aware simultaneously of the heart of your pain, stress, and anxiety, and aware of any sounds, smells, or feelings in your environment? Can you imagine narrowing your focus again right to the heart of your pain, stress, or anxiety? And as you narrow it, you fully immerse yourself into your pain, stress, or anxiety, bathing in your pain, stress, or anxiety, resting in your pain, stress, and anxiety, neither resisting nor rejecting any remaining pain, stress, or anxiety you may feel. Can you imagine the space inside of your mouth? And as you become aware of that space, can you imagine simultaneously the space in which all of your sense of love, bliss, joy, and happiness occur? Can you imagine repeating this exercise 2 or more times per day? And when you are ready, please open your eyes. So Tim, I wanted to just mention this to you. Normally with a client, I wouldn't combine stress, pain, and anxiety, but in your case, I didn't have enough information to know which one it was, so I just threw all of them in there for you. So, and the good thing is that everybody else is participating, so I figure, you know, I could hit a jackpot. So somebody has pain, somebody has anxiety, somebody has stress. So, so what'd you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, that was, I was moving into that area, and it was very interesting that the thought that came into my head was it's in my root. It's actually in the root chakra, that low. And I actually had the impression of being born and being in the hospital. So that's what, I don't know if I was there. I don't know a visual, but this thought came up. I'm in the hospital, I'm being born. And just like there was some trauma, and I remember my mom telling me that she threw up and when she was delivering me. So so she had her own trauma that she was going through at the moment. In a way, I guess I was imagining that last part was sort of when we were bringing in the love, is actually trying to bring the love all the way down into the root chakra. Like it was in the head, it was in the throat, it just needed to come down. Like it's not fully integrated completely in the base root.
Wow, thank you for that. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's your last statement about doing it a couple of times a day. I think that's going to be important, because I think I'm opening up to it. I think I'm really starting to feel something down there, and I think I need to continue to sort of to bring it, because I was also imagining sort of like Swiss cheese down there, you know, a lot of holes and sort of different colors, some black colors and stuff like that. So I know there's some healing that's going down in there, but it needs to kind of continue to kind of process that area.
Wow.
So thank you. I really appreciate it. Really.
Oh, thank you. That was amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
And as I said, I hadn't planned on doing that exercise. I've got my tuning forks, and so that's what I had planned on doing. But
By the way, I liked it too. I had an external, my stressor was somebody external. And I don't know what you said at one point, but somehow I saw that person, it was just scooting backwards out of my line of vision. And that was nice. I can't do anything about it. So it was nice to let it go and let it recede. But you know, the fact that you said root, so that doesn't surprise me about caffeine, because the root is your unconscious mind, which is your body. So that's one thing I'd be careful of. And in addition to that exercise that Bob did, it wouldn't be a bad idea to do something. Do you know, have you ever done 5 elements Qigong? I love this meditation. I learned it, somehow I had some intuitive push at one point to go to a local Qigong studio, and I went there exactly one time, and he taught me this exact one exercise, and it's so wonderful. I do it every single day before meditation, and it allows me to just drop into meditation immediately, because the voluntary, involuntary, the focus have already synchronized, the focus has already happened, I'm already quiet, and most importantly, my body knows that it's part of the process. It's just a flyer. It tells you how to do it. It's just very cool. And what's really nice about it as a root chakra kind of thing is that you're setting an intention, like so to start with, and you're using 4 orbital breaths all the way down to the root and then back up. And then you put your arms out to the side and you connect with the energy of water. And really, this is where the focused awareness gets enhanced. And connecting with the energy of water, you bring that energy into your body and you allow it to circulate. And then you put your hands like this over your forehead. Of course, your eyes are closed. And you connect with the energy of the earth. 4 breaths, 4 circular breaths. In through the nose, over the top of the head, down the back of the body, down through from the low back to the front of the body, then up the front of the body, and the exhale, and then that's one exhale. And then after you do the earth, you take your hands like this and make a tree, and then connect with the energy of trees. 4 breaths, and then this movement right over your solar plexus, the energy of the sun, and then the hands go like so, down, and the energies of the earth, the minerals, you're looking for the minerals, so you get this wonderful physical rejuvenation while you're connecting with the earth and the cosmos. And then lastly, fingers go back this way, and I do it differently. At that point, I veer it off, and I think this is what's in the instructions, is I just bring energy into the top of my head and then circulate that. And boy, am I ready for meditation. And sometimes if I don't have meditation, I can do that, and it takes less than 5 minutes. And you get the combination breath, the stretching a little bit for movement, and most importantly, the integration of the body and the mind. It's really very cool. Start from meditation. So I hope we haven't put you on the spot here, Tim. You've been really game about letting us work on you here.
No, it's perfect. I really appreciate it. I feel like I'm on the spot, but I'm really thankful for everybody's efforts and suggestions. So
yeah, and of course, it's not just, you know, we want it for you, but it's everybody. I mean, who doesn't, whether internally generated or externally received, suffer stress all day long? And we don't want to do that rubber band thing, David. We don't want to pop. We want to keep springing back. So I hope, you know, we've covered some great resources. Thank you so much, Bob and Christine and David, for these modalities and these insights. And
I do want to leave with one little question.
Please.
I don't want an answer for it, but Tim had said there was a point in his life where he needed coffee. That's like someone saying, oh, well, I was okay until I needed sleeping pills. No, that's not what happened. There was a point where you were finding you were very tired. There wasn't a point where you needed coffee. There is no need for coffee. There's not a thing where, oh, well, you need coffee for that. No, coffee doesn't really provide a specific benefit to us. I mean, we can use it. We can have a coffee break and think that's relaxing. It's a stimulant. The way we think about things determines what they are. And maybe think about what was happening at the time when I was finding myself very fatigued. And look for the source of fatigue. Don't look for something from coffee. That's not what happened.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And so in the end, I think we're coming down to meditation is an inner inquiry. Whatever name you put on the breath modality, the mind space, and it just keeps coming down to us, doesn't it? To try to reverberate the energies, the cool and flowing waves of inner peace out into the world, because things are getting a little crazy at the moment. So this was a great timing for this Body and Soul of Stress webinar. Thank you all so very much for attending. And we have this beautiful page that Oksana has given us called I Am Community. It's right there on the iamevents.tilda.ws website. And so we're able to get in touch with each other. And so why not continue our conversations online or in other ways? And Bob and Christine, I guess we have, yes, and also in here in the webinar website, at least until we add the March people, presenters, we will have a link to your website, Bob and Christine, and I think it'd be very cool to listen to your podcast with Maria Namath, or do we need to listen to it after you post it? How's that going to work?
Well, we have a podcast that we did with her. This is the second time we're interviewing her, so we have a previous podcast that we could send you the link.
Okay, cool, and we'll spread that link out, and just maybe we stay linked. May we stay connected. And
I believe that link was that was on the energy of money. That was that podcast.
Big threat to self-preservation there. So thank you all. Unless anyone has any further comments.
Yeah, I have one comment. Judith, I want to thank you and David for having us on. This is the first time we've done a Zoom successfully. I've tried 2 other times to do Zoom, and it hasn't worked. So Oksana, you are amazing. That's all I can tell you. You know, you ironed out the issues, and we now know things about our computer. And we are so impressed that
we couldn't have done it without you.
Absolutely not. We would not be here.
And we thank you, Oksana, one and all, keeping us linked up here in the cyberspace and the brain waves and the spirit waves of I Am.
And it's nice to meet everybody in the group. Very nice, because we've seen some of the previous ones, but nice to meet you. Thank you.
We sure enjoyed you. Thank you so very much for being here, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're honored to be part of it.
Thank you so much.